Demoman vs Junkrat, the drunk Scottish Cyclops versus the explosives-obsessed freak. Who would win in a fistfight? Well, Junk is apparently 6'5", which is mental, the 4th tallest character in the game, but Demoman is drunk and has a bottle, so kinda goes without saying. Before we start the video, my mods told me to tell you that you should join the Discord. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but there you go, I've said it. Also, I think you're meant to press some bell buttons on YouTube. As we know, Overwatch and TF2 are identical games, and Overwatch copied TF2 in every conceivable way. I think most of the code is actually just copied and pasted across. Because of this, some of the characters bear similarities. Look at this guy for example, literally just the spy reskinned. And that's why in this series we've been comparing some of the characters from the two games, their abilities and their playstyles. But this series wouldn't be complete without taking a look at these two chaps. Both like explodey things, both have slightly insane personalities, and both have injuries which you might have assumed were self-inflicted. And while that's true for Junkrat's leg, it's not the case for the Demoman's missing eye, which, as some of you will know, he actually lost because he took a sneak peek at one of Merasmus's books called the Bombinamacon, and now the Demoman's cursed eye can be found floating around at Halloween in the form of Monoculus. Junkrat was likely inspired at least a little bit by Demoman. There clearly are some similarities in their kit, but I find their playstyles do have some differences, with Junkrat often acting more as an artillery, rarely needing to get too close to the front lines, while Demo can sometimes be used quite aggressively to push through the enemy's front lines, as well as more defensively to hold down objectives. For some reason, Junkrat's gameplay has never drawn me in quite the same way. To me, he feels somehow even more spammy, but that might just be because I'm bad at him. But one of the reasons I probably fell in love with Demo was his insane mobility, which Junkrat can't really compete with. Demo and Junk are both high damage dealing characters. Their job is often to do lots of splash damage to multiple targets, as well as control choke points and deny areas of the map. So let's start by comparing the damage from their primary weapons. The grenade launcher does 100 damage on direct hit and has 4 shots. 4 times 100 equals... carry the... 400. If we divide this total damage by the time it takes for him to shoot the grenades, i.e. all the attack intervals added together, and his reload time, we get a sustained DPS of 82.6. The frag launcher, on the other hand, does 120 damage on direct hit and has 5 shots. So 600 divided by the reload time and the sum of all the attack intervals, and we get 144 sustained DPS. We now have to convert this to a TF2 equivalent, as a single hit point in each game will have different values. To do this, we can use the 1 to 1.6 damage or HP ratio we calculated in previous episodes, which we got from comparing the baseline health of the characters in each game, i.e. 125 HP in TF2 and 200 in Overwatch. You could also take the average health pool from each game and compare those, and this gives a very similar figure too, but generally speaking, we're assuming that 1 HP has slightly less value in Overwatch because they tend to have a larger amount of HP overall. So divide 144 by 1.6 and we get 90 DPS. Now that's pretty close. More evidence that the code is clearly copied and pasted across from TF2. Additionally, the grenade launcher has a 2.8 meter area of effect, while the frag launcher only has a 2 meter AoE, but can do a little bit more damage, so this kind of makes up for it. Neither have fall off on direct hits, although I'm not too certain about the splash damage. If you know the answer to that, let me know in the comments below. So, pretty close once again. Oh, and we're ignoring random crits for the time being because that makes things far too hard. And anyway, more like random am I right? High five. Okay, maybe their secondaries can give us an answer to our question. Well, this might be tricky because the sticky bomb launcher and the concussion mines function very differently. 8 stickies with around a 6-second reload time versus 2 mines with an 8-second cooldown per mine. There really isn't much contest. And trying to compare the sustained DPS doesn't really make sense either, as because of this 8-second cooldown, you end up with some really low figures for the concussion mines. Both weapons are for creating traps, but the sticky bomb launcher is also just another weapon that you can use throughout your game. The mines, on the other hand, aside from traps, are just used at key moments for burst damage and for quick getaways. However, I think it's with burst damage that the mines really come into their own. And while this table shows the potential burst damage to be much higher for the sticky bomb launcher, this figure is much more realistic and much easier to achieve with the mines. The key difference and the thing that makes the mines so powerful is the minimal activation time. It feels almost instant. I measured it to be about 0.25 seconds, and this means being able to react immediately and defend yourself. If there's a tracer in your face, you can instantly throw and detonate a mine to both do damage and get yourself out of there really quickly. Whereas with the stickies, the 0.7 seconds activation time has such a huge impact on how you use them. In the same scenario, with a scout in your face, you have to put one on the floor, walk backwards over it, and hope that the enemy is in the right spot when detonating. Also, in reality, with the sticky bomb launcher, you'll be doing closer to around 60 damage, depending on range, and the big 3-meter blast radius makes the mines a lot more forgiving too. So, with burst damage at least, I think the mines might just win out. But overall, I think we still have to give it to the demo. Due to the fact that you have 8 sticky bombs to play around with, you can reload at any time, and you have such a higher potential DPS. So overall, I guess the Demoman does more damage. But hold your horses, what's that I hear? Riptire. A fully remotely controlled explosive with the ability to deal up to 600 damage to as many enemies as you can catch in its radius. TF2 has no equivalent to the Overwatch Ultimate, so this kind of breaks everything. When it comes to who does more damage, excluding Riptire, then the Demoman wins, but including it, well, maybe we have to give it to Junkrat. Okay, we need a decider. Screw it. What would win, Riptire exploding 6 Roadhogs or 8 stickies under 12 heavies?
There is no such thing as a coincidence.
The trap is where Junkrat's kit really starts to differ from the demos. A powerful piece of utility for crowd control, holding victims in place for 3 seconds, and again there is no equivalent we can compare it to on the Demoman. Melee damage is another one that's interesting to consider. In TF2, melee damage is generally quite high at 65 for all stock weapons, excluding Scout and Spy, and I kinda love this as it motivates you to use melee and it leads to a lot of stupid and chaotic moments. Overwatch in comparison uses 30 for melee damage, with a few exceptions, and this would be even less when converting it over to TF2 numbers. Melee is used more as a last resort in Overwatch, useful for getting that finishing blow, but there are a few tactical ways to combo it into your gameplay, such as with Tracer's one-clip melee combo, or with Winston using melee in between zaps. But let's finish this video by taking a look at some of the other main stats for each of the two characters, so we can finally make a decision as to who is the best at doing explosives. And all these numbers are already converted to TF2 values. So the Demoman is a bit beefier, they have very similar speeds, the primary weapon DPS we've already looked at, but again is very similar. These last 3 rows I gave a score out of 10. For range, I think Junkrat might take this one, as his grenades still explode on impact even after the first bounce. So this allows him to be used more effectively as an artillery. The Demoman's grenades on the other hand, they explode after a short timer or if you hit an enemy before they touch the ground. Both have mobility options, but the Demoman is insanely mobile. As for which is more difficult, well, personally I think Demoman takes skill, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But most importantly of all, who makes the best female? These models are actually pretty darn good, and because I stole these images, I popped links in the description below if you want to check them out. There's loads of other stuff we didn't cover. Crits, damage boosting, Ubers, weapon switching in TF2, different loadouts, but even without all that stuff, this may have been one of the most difficult comparisons we've done yet. But I think we can still answer the question, who does more damage? Based on their primary weapons, it's just about Junkrat, but overall sustained DPS I would say goes to Demoman. Unless you include Junkrat's ult, then it goes to Junkrat. Unless you include crits, then it goes to Demoman. Simple really. Glad I could clear that up.
control point.